I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast that's not one about UFOs, because this week we watched Sub Smash.
Written by Alan Fennell.
Directed by David Lane.
And aired on November 11th, 1970.
I don't know why I don't know why I emphasized that as Sub Smash instead of Sub Smash, you know. I don't know why I put emphasis on smash when really they're kind of just one word.
It is hyphenated. Sub Smash is like an actual term, right? Like it means something, doesn't it?
Well, the good news is, as I always say when we say this, we have the whole sum of internet knowledge.
Oh, I just Googled it and it's only pulling up UFO, so I guess not.
Yeah, I had the same realization. Man, I found a place called Frame Cap Lib. Presumably Frame Cap Library. And it's just...
Yeah,
it's not
looks like it was made in 1997.
UFO. It's a couple of it's frame caps of a couple of old British sci-fi shows. Mm-hmm. Well, not all sci-fi, but mostly sci-fi. They've got Blake 7 on here. Last updated 01/02/2015. That seems to be true of all of the pages. Yeah, this whole website was last updated 01/02/2015. Amazing, because it does, like you said, look like it was made in the 90s.
Maybe it was, and they just never overhauled it to look more modern. Which is good.
Perhaps.
Which is good, since every website looks exactly the same now. But what doesn't look exactly the same is Sub Smash. This is the most wild episode of UFO yet, mostly because it's not even about UFOs.
Well, it's the impetus for the events within the episode is a UFO, a singular UFO, causing issues in the ocean.
From there...
There's a lot of words to say that there's one UFO in this episode.
Mm-hmm. It sort of just shows up at the beginning and then just... Yeah, the rest of the episode is mostly about the predicament they find themselves in.
It kind of looks like the light bulb UFO that was blowing up lunar orbiters in conflict.
Yeah, I didn't even get a good glimpse of it. It's only a major part of the episode for like 5 minutes, if that. I did kind of think that maybe Chin was being mind-controlled. Is that... I wasn't sure. Well, I wasn't sure.
I kind of had the same idea, but then I was like, there's no way they'd do mind control again, right? There's no way, right?
I mean, I wasn't sure, to be honest. I'm still not. I guess it doesn't really matter either way.
I think he just had a breakdown. I don't think he was being mind controlled, honestly.
Yeah, I have no idea. I really have no idea.
I guess we don't know for sure, but I really don't think that. He was being mind controlled. Why could I not put that sentence together? Jeez.
Given the description that I read last week from Wikipedia, you know, Straker confronts his claustrophobia in a submarine, whatever the heck it was. I assumed that would be a bigger part of the episode. It's kind of there, right? Straker is definitely not in his element, but he doesn't deal with it, I think, in his direct a way as I imagined he would.
Well, I think Ed Bishop's playing it really well. I think Ed Bishop gives a really good acting performance in this episode because he's playing it as a man who's like restraining it to get everybody else off board before he fully succumbs to his fears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right about that, and his performance is notably different than it is usually. So,
yeah, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we get there. But the episode opens it actually does open sort of with a UFO. It opens with like a ship, I don't know, exploding, and it's starting. It starts to sink. And everything's on fire. There's explosions all over. There's chaos. You're like, what's going on? People are dying. People are jumping overboard to escape the horrors of what's on the boat, the ship. It's not a good time for anyone involved.
This is the result of a UFO.
Yeah, which, would not be my first assumption. Straker, again, unlike last week, where he seemed to be oblivious to the obvious explanation, once again comes up with quite possibly the most insane explanation. This could have been anything. Maybe the ship hit a mine. Maybe a submarine took it out. Hundreds of explanations I could think. Well, not hundreds, dozens, let's say. But Straker hears about this and immediately goes, that was a UFO. And Freeman's like, you're right. It must have been that UFO that slipped in when our radars were down last week.
Well, as we know by this point, Freeman is basically just a yes man.
So Straker decides... Well, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe that's what Paul Foster is here for, he's here to balance out Freeman. Freeman's just too much of a yes man. He kisses up to Straker too much. So Paul Foster, that's sort of his role, is to counterbalance that.
Well, sure. But on the same token, at least Freeman has a well-defined position within Shadow. What the hell... what the hell is Foster's position? He's been on Moonbase. He's been piloting lunar orbiters. He's been a pilot on Earth. Now, this episode, we come to find out that he's, second in command on Skydiver.
I mean, it's pretty realistic, though, when you think about it. People... in people's... Maybe not you, since you're basically an academic, but, people enter jobs and then end up doing things that are not even related to what they were hired for.
Well, yes, but that's only also really in, the standard workforce and not... I mean, Shadow is clearly a military-esque organization. You don't...
But still...
you don't go into the... you don't go into the army, get trained to be, I don't know, a Green Beret, and then, all of a sudden get assigned to, the USS John F. Kennedy as a seaman,
Yeah, but you do hear those stories. I mean, I know you're but you do hear those stories though of went through basic training, went through all this training and stuff, and now I just sweep rooms.
Well, I think it's very different being trained and then being a janitor, where instead of being as opposed to being trained and then being put into to a combat position completely unlike the one you were trained for. Because remember, Paul Foster entered Shadow as a test pilot, and so it made sense that he was piloting aircraft or he was piloting the lunar orbiter. But, for him to be on a submarine is, so far removed from his training, unless he's, just there to pilot Sky 1, in which case, why wasn't he the one piloting Sky 1 in this episode?
To be honest, even Alec Freeman doesn't really have a well-defined role. I mean, for most of his appearances, again, I know we say this every week, but for most of his appearances, he's just been there to be a guy for Straker to talk to. He hasn't really done all that much.
Yeah, well, he's damn good at his job. Okay?
Whoa, all right. I mean, I guess I didn't know I was talking to a Freeman apologist here, but all right.
Well, in Freeman's first show of resistance to Straker, Straker goes, we're going to need to take Skydiver out there to find out if the UFO is hiding out underwater. Because we find out here, we actually learn a little bit of lore in regards to the UFOs. Straker says that the UFO must be hiding underwater because it would prevent the UFO from degrading in the atmosphere. Apparently, the alien UFOs suffer some sort of degradation in the Earth's atmosphere.
Huh, it's news to me.
Well, it was news to me in this episode, but that's what I'm saying. We get some new UFO lore in this episode, surprisingly, even though this episode was predominantly not UFO focused. We do get a little bit of UFO lore.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that, or I guess I just wasn't paying attention.
But anyway, as I started this kind of aside, Freeman has his first resistance to Straker because Straker's like, I'm going out to skydive. And Freeman goes, are you sure that's a good idea, Straker? You know. And Straker goes, yes. Straker plot dumps for the audience, for the convenience of the audience, goes, yes. You know, the doctors call it claustrophobia, a fear of tight or cramped spaces.
I'm pretty sure most people know what claustrophobia is. That's like the one phobia that like people know what it is, or know the like scientific name or whatever.
Arachnophobia.
I guess, yeah, or like agoraphobia as well. But this doesn't really seem like a great idea.
And then Straker's counter argument is just, well, you know, skydiver's not all that small and not all that cramped.
You just cut to him like
sweating.
Yeah. Did you notice like maybe Ed Bishop was actually sweating, but like his makeup in this episode looked very strange. It looked both like it was running off his face and like it was caked on more heavily than usual at the same time.
I kind of just got the impression that he was actually sweating.
You could see his eyeliner very clearly.
Classic. Look, the makeup team just really wanted you to know that Straker was having a bad time of it.
Well, so we meet some skydiver people. I don't think
skydiver people.
Yeah, well, we've seen the interior of Skydiver and like the crew of it and everything before, but I'm pretty sure these characters are completely new. They're not the same ones that we had seen previously.
Yeah, we don't even get Peter Gordino. Or Gordeno.
I know, yeah.
Still unclear on pronunciation, but...
Yeah, what was it? Carlin or whatever?
Yeah, Carlin.
Yeah,
the one guy who we've seen consistently on Skydiver throughout the show is not there in the one Skydiver-focused episode.
I know there's been so many moments, or like so many episodes so far where it's just like he gets his one like little reminder that like, hey, this character's part of the show. He's on Skydiver. He pilots Sky One. And then like when you actually get to the episode where it's like, all right, his time to shine. Nowhere to be found. That's such a classic British like TV thing to do.
Yeah, it is. It's unfortunate that we've watched enough classic British TV to be able to say that, you know. We've watched enough of these shows to be able to say, yes, that's just what those Brits did in those days when they made TV.
Yeah, just flying against all expectation. I don't even think that's necessarily a British thing. I think it's just like, in general, old TV just has like these moments that just kind of are just like a facepalm moment type thing. But anyway, he's not there. We're introduced to some other characters, the foremost of which is Chin.
Yeah. Chin, another, what's the word I want to use here? Another kind of data point for, in the first episode, we kind of made a joke about actors playing characters with the same names. Lieutenant Tony Chin, played by the actor Anthony Chin.
Mm-hmm.
Although the actor's name is spelled with two N's, although in one of his acting credits later in his career, he would start to go by Anthony Chin with one N.
I mean, it's still the same damn name, like come on.
I mean, yes. Just doing my due diligence here, you know. Being a good podcaster.
So, Nina Barry, who's previously been seen on Moonbase, is also now on Skydiver.
Yeah, for some indeterminate, unclear purpose.
We see her out of the Moonbase, like, wig for the first time. Which just, I don't know, like, this question has been begged before just by the costume itself, but further begging it, I guess, is just, like, this just makes you realize, like, I don't know, the sort of absurdity of the Moonbase uniform or something, because it is, I mean, it's a uniform, it is a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
But it includes that, like, purple wig.
This kind of semi-ironically confirms that it is a wig in universe.
or that they just do their hair like that, and that's part, they have to do that as part of the uniform, which, if so, God help them. But yes, she's on Skydiver, and we're also introduced, I believe we're introduced, I don't think we've seen this character before, to Lieutenant Jim Lewis, played by none other than Paul Maxwell.
You say none other, like we know who Paul Maxwell is. Do we know who Paul Maxwell is before this?
I mean, we've seen him before this. I didn't know who he was before this, but he's been in things that we've watched for other shows. Like Aliens. He has an extremely extensive acting career, actually, which we'll get to at the end. And there's some other characters, I believe. Or maybe not. Maybe there aren't. I don't know. I guess Holden wasn't on Skydiver, right? Holden was, God, who the hell was Holden? I'm looking at the cast list here. Great, doesn't have his picture.
Holden? The Jerry Anderson Encyclopedia has pictures of all the characters.
Nice.
Holden was the, looking at the picture, Holden was the guy, so when Freeman shows up at the end on kind of the rescue ship,
yeah, he's a diver,
Holden was the
right?
guy who goes diving down, yeah.
Knew it.
Who looks kind of like a bargain bin Willem Dafoe.
Really?
Yeah. Hang on, I'll just send you this link.
I'm not going to open it. I'm not going to reach for my phone. I'm too comfortable where I'm sitting on the floor.
It's okay. I'll post a picture. I'll post Holden's picture in the show notes. People can decide for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so Straker's there, and so at the moment Skydiver's just on the surface, it's just surfaced, and Straker's kind of looking out the cockpit, the crow's nest, looking around, trying to see if anything's nearby, and then they detect the presence of the UFO, so they alert Straker that they need to dive immediately, and he goes, "Oh no, that means I gotta go under."
Mm-hmm. They're out in the open ocean, by the way. It's just water as far as the eye can see. One of the most terrifying, places to be.
So he goes under, and he sees Paul Foster also reassigned to Subsmash. You were mentioning that Nina Barry's on Subsmash to Skydiver. Nina Barry's on Skydiver for some reason. They imply in this episode, but I guess it's a temporary reassignment kind of thing, because at the end of the episode, Straker turns to Nina and goes, "Well, you'll be back on Moonbase soon enough."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to find out what happens next. I say find out, but I'm looking at my notes. Shoot. I think we just get a few scenes.
Well, so they get hit. They get hit.
Yeah.
The UFO, hits them.
Yeah,
launches a missile and it hits them.
They get hit. Before that, there are a few little moments, I guess, kind of endearing us to Chin mostly. Doesn't last that long. Straker, I think, also goes into his room, and we see sort of his claustrophobia set in because his room is incredibly cramped, as you would expect.
Yeah, I think it's Jim Lewis is like, my room is at your disposal, and Straker just goes, thanks.
Mm-hmm. You see him sitting at like an extremely tiny desk. But yeah,
thankfully not on an air mattress.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they get hit. And Chin gets knocked out. We get at this point in the episode, and for the rest of the episode, we get some interesting angles that I think, after the impact, Skydiver is basically perched pretty precipitously, on this sort of ledge. And we get some interesting, when we see the interior of the sub, we get some interesting angles that I think telegraph that pretty well. Right, that they're not upright and that they're not sturdy.
Yeah, they're kind of balancing. They're balancing on the edge of a cliff, a la the Titanic, I suppose, threatening to fall off at any moment.
Meanwhile, wait, is there anything happening meanwhile? I don't think so, actually. Going through my notes here.
Not yet. No, because they when they got hit, they lose communication with Shadow Command. So they're kind of on their own, and the UFO could come back. So Straker asks if they can launch Sky 1, and Paul says that maybe. They're basically at a really low angle, so Sky 1 might not be able to launch successfully. They've only got like an angle of 10 degrees, and Straker says it's enough to just launch Sky 1, so they say, okay, YOLO, so they just launch Sky 1, and it does successfully escape and destroy the UFO, and then establishes basically communication with Shadow Command and tells them that Skydiver 1 is trapped underwater and rapidly losing air, and so Freeman basically... So I guess Freeman's job is essentially just to be there to take over when Straker's gone, because Freeman then takes over command of Shadow at that moment and orders that they execute the Sub-Smash protocol.
Yeah, so they execute Order 66. They go all in, and...
They detonate the secret nuclear warhead in Skydiver, and Straker's just wiped off the map.
Yeah, and good riddance. No, well, so they have some sort of beacon as well, or like it looks like a little buoy, and I think they deploy that as like or Skydiver deploy, or Sky 1 deploys it or something. I can't remember, but it looked cool, which is why I mention it. Like most things in this show, it looks cool. Very overtly telegraphed, right? Even when they bring in the rescue ship, it just has rescue written in big letters on the side.
Yeah, it's the Albatross, I think it's called.
No, so they in the meantime, though, they're devising like a plan to escape. And I think Straker comes up with it, and according to this plan, 2 people can escape while 3 remain inside.
Yeah, so they have, and this was actually mentioned earlier, as soon as Straker gets on the ship, classic Straker maneuver because of his claustrophobia, I guess, immediately sees an escape hatch and asks if that's been used and how effective it is. And I think Ellis, or maybe it's Foster, says that they have to use them in training, and they're pretty good, but they can only be... Each escape hatch can only be used once every 90 minutes, and there were 3 of them, so in theory, you should be able to evacuate everyone within, 3 hours or so. There's only 5 of them on board. But because of the angle at which the ship landed on the rocks, only one of the escape hatches is actually usable because the other 2 are blocked by rocks. And they can't use... Because then Straker is like, well, can we use the torpedo bays to basically launch us out? And they say, no, that'll just basically also shoot us straight into the rocks. So essentially they only have 1 escape hatch and then one kind of one-use hatch that I wasn't really clear on what its purpose is, but it's not really an escape hatch, it's like a one-time use thing.
Yeah, I wasn't clear. I was exactly the same. I was going to ask you, actually, because I was not clear as to what exactly Nina was Like, what was the part of the plan that involved her? Like, whatever. But basically, that's the point: is that they only have one escape hatch, and they have this other exit that they can use, which is why 2 people can leave and 3 have to stay. And obviously, we didn't mention it, but the big problem here is that they're running out of air.
Yeah, right. Well, excuse me. They have about, I think, 4.5 hours of air, and I think, who is it? Jim is like, well, that's not enough time to get everybody out, and Straker says, well, the good news is, as more people leave, the more air there is for the rest of us. So we basically need to get everybody out as quickly as possible.
So Straker makes the decision. There's like a big tense moment, right, where they're sort of all hanging out, and Straker, not hanging out, but they're waiting for Straker to say something, and he makes the decision of who's going to leave and who's going to stay.
Yeah, he sends Jim out first through the escape hatch and Nina through the one-time use, unclear, not sure what it is.
Is Chin still knocked out at this point? I can't remember. I think I'm pretty sure he's not. I think he wakes up before this. He has a couple more, I don't remember exactly where they are in the episode, but he has a couple more, like, heart-to-heart moments with Straker, or, like, again, just moments endearing us more to Chin than really anyone else. Although, I mean, he wasn't that, like, in-depth of a character or anything, even still, so. But still, I guess it was nice, and I guess justified what happens in a bit. So
so Jim escapes.
Yeah, well, so they enact the plan. Part of it goes right, part of it goes horribly wrong.
Yeah, Jim successfully escapes.
Yeah, Jim, yeah.
Nina
doesn't.
I guess there's like a charge that's supposed to go off and let the water in. Apparently what happens is the charge doesn't blow. But I guess the thing is, like, you know, wherever she is, whatever she's in, you know, again, not really clear, but whatever she's in, she doesn't really have a way to communicate with everybody in the main part.
No, so I guess just to explain it, like, this... It's so weird. This is another one of those, like, old TV things where it's like Straker is the one with claustrophobia. You would think that he would be the one put in this position where he's in, like, this little tube, right? It's not. It's Nina. So basically what it is she has to crawl into this tube that's, like, it's basically only big enough to contain her. Right? It's almost like the on Moonbase when they jump into those little chutes, but it's even smaller. And so the thing is, she gets to the end where it's supposed to, like, blow open the end of it so she can escape or whatever the plan was, but it doesn't work. So she can't. There's nothing she can do. She can't. It's too small for her to turn around. It's too far away from anything else for her to yell for help, although she tries. And so she's just stuck. Like that was probably the I think out of anything maybe that UFO has shown us, that was probably the most terrifying thing. Is, like, imagine just being in, like, this little tube. You're, you know, far deep under the surface of the ocean, and you're just stuck. Like, you can't do anything.
I mean, not to mention Dolores Montez just giving her Oscar.
Oh, come on, not really.
Performance there.
I wouldn't go that far. She's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I wouldn't go that far.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Hard to believe that this is halfway through the episode. It feels like, now that we discuss it, It feels like barely anything happens in this episode. Although it didn't feel that way while I was watching it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what happens next is
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the sorry for interrupting. A lot of the like entertainment of this episode comes from the tension of Straker slowly running out of air, but also dealing with his claustrophobia. More and more, I guess, as other people leave. Maybe it's a little more manageable when he's got people around to bounce off of. But as people are leaving, he's more and more alone, basically. And keep in mind, he thinks Nina Barry has successfully escaped, although they do find out, I think, pretty shortly that they don't necessarily know where Nina is, because Freeman gets there in Albatross 1, and the divers are able to successfully rescue Jim. And then, so Skydiver 1 doesn't have the ability to contact Shadow Command, but I guess it's still got like short range communication, so it can communicate with Albatross, and Freeman is like, yeah, we got Jim, but no sign of Nina.
So yeah, they're alerted to the fact that something has gone horribly wrong. But meanwhile, something's going horribly wrong with Chin. It's not clear, again, exactly what this is, whether it's just a mental breakdown or whether it's UFO mind control. But, to set this up, we're sort of seeing little moments where Chin is, he's clearly having some sort of headache or just a problem, some uncomfortability or something, which is telegraphed by like a shrill noise. If this is UFO mind control, it's we'll just say, I guess there's no other UFO in the episode to indicate that that's what it is.
Yeah. So I think that's why I'm kind of inclined to think it's not that.
Yeah, and again, like, this whole thing is so weird because it's like Straker is the one who's set up to have claustrophobia, yet the one who has a mental breakdown is Chin, who is part of the crew of Skydiver, and then the one who has to actually deal with a truly claustrophobic situation is Nina.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that, in a way, this episode is actually less concerned with torturing Straker than some of the previous episodes. Thinking back to the one where John died, which I can't remember the name of for some reason at the moment.
Who was John again?
His son.
Oh, yeah, question of priorities, yeah.
Yeah, so thinking back to, like, a question of priorities with, like, the show, I guess, was clearly interested in, like, torturing Straker, giving him this, like, impossible decision to have to make, and him doing his best to try save the day, but ultimately, and I don't think we necessarily even really elaborated on this, failing to do anything successfully. He doesn't get the alien. He doesn't save his son, John. He doesn't do anything successfully in that episode. But this episode, I guess, we set up that Straker has claustrophobia, but then the episode doesn't really, like, torture him about it. This episode is kind of an episode that shows Straker is someone who really values everybody else's life above his own, like he did in Question of Priorities. And this episode, interestingly, kind of has the inverse, where everybody is saved. It's almost the anti-Question of Priorities in a way. He... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it does directly reference Question of Priorities. Later, we'll get to it in a second, but Straker is remembering the events of that episode as he's dying, basically.
Yeah. So it's interesting that in this episode, Straker does almost kind of the same thing. He puts everybody else above himself, right? He sets the order of escape so that he's lost, even though he is the one probably most terrified to be in this situation because of his claustrophobia. Although, later on, I guess Nina gets pretty terrified. Chin has a mental breakdown, but from the beginning, when he sets this whole thing up, he's the one who's got the most reason to want to leave first, but he puts everybody else above himself. But then successfully, at the end of the day, everybody gets saved, in comparison to Question of Priorities, where nobody gets saved, even though Straker was still trying to do the same thing and put everybody else above himself.
And when we talked about question of priorities, we talked about how like a lot of the stuff in that episode basically arose from Straker not being willing to combine his work life and his I don't know what you'd call his non-work life, right? And like we even talked about
personal life.
Yeah, personal life. We even talked about we even talked about how like what was it, like the backstory of the episode was about that, right? Is like his job at Shadow drove a rift between him and his family, causing him and his wife to get divorced. And then obviously the events of the episode play out in such a way that like him not telling Alec about his son is basically what ends up killing his son, in a vicarious way. And here it's almost like he's sort of trying to reinforce his position, and he's validated for it, right? Is like he's not combining his even though he has claustrophobia as like a personal fear and issue, he's putting, like you said, everyone else above himself. He's acting as a leader, and he's not letting his claustrophobia cloud his decisions. And in the end, he's unlike in Question of Priorities, he's actually rewarded for that at the end.
Right.
So interesting little parallel there.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I mean, a parallel that is perhaps invited by the episode, because like you said, they do directly reference A Question of Priorities later, but we're not quite
Yeah, that's actually why I am pretty confident in saying that. Otherwise, I probably would have been like, well, it's probably not true type thing. But since it does like directly bring up Question of Priorities, I'm pretty confident in saying what I just said.
Mm-hmm. Well, so back on Skydiver, Chin is the next to leave through the... I believe Chin is the next to leave. Yeah, before Foster, because Foster and Straker have a conversation later. So Chin is the next to leave through the 90-minute escape hatch.
Doesn't Chin... We get Chin's breakdown, right?
Yeah, so Chin breaks down and like tries to destroy everything, and Straker's like, stop him, or he's going to destroy our only way out of here. We also didn't mention that I guess the Sub-Smash protocol is that they're going to destroy Skydiver. They don't really have... Or perhaps they do, but they're not enacting it in this situation. They don't have any sort of protocol to recover and repair Skydiver. It's just like if it's damaged to the point of sinking, they just destroy it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Which is part of the, necessity to get everybody off the ship before they blow it up, I guess.
Yeah, I guess they could... Well, the episode was already filled with enough tension as it was. I mean, this is a tense situation. Like, it would be hard... It's actually difficult to create a scenario like this one and have it not be tense. You know, like... Right, because they're trapped in a submarine. There's already a tension about that. That's already like a situation where it's like you just mentioned the premise of it and people are already like sweating like, oh god. Well, so I wasn't clear on this. Chin dies, right? Or
no, I don't think so. I think he does get off.
Is he in that final scene? I can't even remember.
Oh, actually, no, you're right. No, after the, no, sorry. You're right. After the breakdown, he does, I think, die. Well, they don't say he died, but Straker gives a, like, suitably, like, he's probably dead statement of he's out of it or something like that. They don't necessarily straight up say he's dead, but
yeah,
Straker does say something that's like suitably like, well, he's probably dead then.
Yeah, plus he's bleeding profusely from the head, we should mention, and when they cut to him after he falls off that little catwalk thing, he's just motionless with his eyes open, seemingly dead. But is he's not in that final scene, right, in the hospital? I can't remember exactly.
No, but to be fair, I don't think that Jim Lewis is in that scene either.
Okay, yeah. So that doesn't really have anything to do with it.
Because I think it's just Foster, Freeman, Straker, and Barry.
Mm-hmm. Well, so yeah, like we said, another 90 minutes has passed, so Foster can use the hatch, which he does.
Well, Foster tries to argue with Straker for saying Straker should get out. But Straker says, "You're breathing my oxygen. Get out of here, Foster."
Mm-hmm. Once Chin, what was the context of this? Him and Foster have like a little moment where Straker delivers some wisdom, you know? I think that was over Chin's body. Because
yeah, he says, yeah, because I have it written down in my notes. Foster says, "I'm scared," or "I'm getting scared," and he says, like, "I've never been scared before," and Straker says, "You're getting older," and Foster says, "Not that much older," and Straker says, "Well, the older you get." And I wrote, "The older you get, the stronger you are." Wrong show. What Straker actually says is, "The older you get, the more precious life becomes."
Mm-hmm.
Because the less time you have left.
Yeah. I guess our discussion last week of the speed of life, like, preempted this or something. Because last week or rather actually just I was talking about how, like, the older you get, the faster life seems to go.
Yeah, we actually did have that conversation last week. That's weird.
Further proof that these shows were created by time travelers from the future who listened to our podcasts.
Are we expanding that nugget of decorative vegetable lore to encompass not just Trust Your Doctor now?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, okay, sure. Okay. Good, okay.
So Foster leaves, Straker decides to open a little closet, and lo and behold, Nina is inside. I don't know how she got in there.
Well, I think that's the hatch that she was supposed to use, and Straker has this moment where he sees all these flashbacks to his earlier, life, and he sees his marriage to Mary and the birth of his son, and then the death of his son. Apparently, the birth of his son part is actually a reference to another episode that we haven't seen yet, which is Confetti Check A-OK, which I think Steven referenced.
Mm.
And that's the one that kind of shows the founding of Shadow, but Wikipedia mentions that that flashback to the birth of their son is seen in the episode Confetti Check A-OK.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting.
He sees his whole life flash before his eyes.
Yep.
He opens up that closet, and Nina Barry falls out, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die!" And he's like, "No, it's okay." Meanwhile, back up at Albatross, Freeman's like, "How are we gonna get him out? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?" And Holden's like, "I've got an idea." And Freeman's like, "Okay, let's hear it." And we don't hear what the idea is because we hear it later on.
Yeah, we basically just cut to like essentially like a long shot. You see like a massive explosion, and then you hear Holden go, "Well, that didn't work," and then it ends. No, I'm kidding.
Why do we keep doing these fake out endings on UFO?
I don't know. Actually, I just said that because it's so dark in here that I can't read my handwritten notes, so I have no idea where this goes from here.
Turn on the light, open the blinds. It's like 10:15 in the morning.
No. Okay, I can actually read them again. I guess my eyes adjusted, but and we're only a few minutes away from the end of the episode anyway, so Nina and Straker have like a little moment where basically Nina, she's basically, it's not 100% clear, but she's going to admit that she has some affinity for Straker. Right, whether that's it's seemingly romantic.
Yeah, seemingly romantic, but...
And I think maybe Straker's visions of his previous marriage, and how his wife, because they include that moment from A Question of Priorities where Straker's ex-wife goes, "I never want to see you again." And then all of a sudden they're coming out with this, probably hints of, romance type thing.
Okay, so, well, the great news is we know enough to say they probably will never touch on this again.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially since Nina is going back to Moonbase. Straker has basically never been on Moonbase except in Kill Straker. Although I guess we could see him on Moonbase again. There's still 2/3 of the show left to get through, so...
I'm amazed his claustrophobia was never brought up before, considering how cramped that lunar orbiter is to get from Earth to Moonbase.
I know, maybe that's why he has not typically been on Moonbase. It's because of the claustrophobia. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
But anyway, we then Blake 7 sitcom-style ending cut to them in a hospital going, "Man, that was crazy."
Yeah, actually, they're fading out to black and then smash cut to the hospital and then going, "Wow, so what you're saying is you rescued us by detonating a bomb that launched Skydiver up."
I know.
And then Freeman's like, "Yep, exactly. And by doing that, the divers were able to access Skydiver using the other 2 escape hatches."
Yeah, discussing this in excruciating detail multiple days later.
Not showing us what happened. I guess they did kind of exhaust their model work budget for the episode much earlier, so that's understandable.
Yeah, I just find scenes like these funny, not only in UFO, but just in general, of it's the show, how it's shot is indicating that it's been multiple days since the events happened. You guys are just now discussing the details of it.
Well, there's some implication that maybe they were out of it.
Yeah, you're right.
Straker's lighting up a cigar, and the nurse is like, "Hey, you can't smoke in here," and he just shrugs. Doesn't put out the cigar, doesn't stop smoking the cigar, just keeps doing it.
Yep. This is basically how it ends. I think Freeman and Foster leave. Foster, as far as we've seen, has been on bed rest for a good portion of his on-screen appearances. But anyway, they leave Straker and Nina alone, and they have a bit more of a heart-to-heart moment, kind of extended from the one before, where they're sort of they seem to be implying that there's some romantic connection between them.
Yeah, she says something like, Straker, if there was anything said down there that, was too far, and then Straker says, "Or what about the things that were unsaid?"
Damn.
Kind of leaving this lingering sexual tension in the air. No, I don't know.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I wouldn't call it sexual tension, but I would call it romantic tension. Yeah.
Tension. And I just have a note here. The episode ends, but I have a note that's just what is Paul's outfit? I don't know if you noticed Paul's outfit in this final scene when him and Freeman leave and kind of wave to Straker. What the hell was his outfit? It's let me try and describe it to you. It was sort of like a double-breasted jacket, except the 2 sides of the jacket didn't really meet fully in the middle, so there was a little bit of a gap, and then the 2 sides of the jacket were joined to each other by 3 strips with buttons on either end, almost like a march, kind of like Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band style, kind of join in the middle, except the two sides didn't really meet in the middle, so the straps were keeping it closed, and there was just kind of a gap in the middle. It was so weird. It was so bizarre.
Can't say I remember what you're talking about, but I'll try and put a picture of it in the show notes, even if I have to upload it myself.
And I'm giving like the worst possible explanation of what it looks like. And yeah, so then the episode ends there. Good times.
Good episode, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say so. I did really enjoy this episode. I put it up there with, like question of priorities in terms of my enjoyment.
I don't know how we picked up on this so fast, because we said this like in the very first episode of UFO, but it's like, it's not really about the UFOs, and this one just, again, kind of proves that. Obviously, it's a spectrum. Some of the episodes are more about like the actual UFOs and the lore behind them and all this, but many of them, like Subsmash, are not.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, more about like the human reaction to UFOs, more so than the UFOs themselves. Which is, I think, perhaps more interesting in a way. I think you can't make 25 episodes of a TV show where every episode is about a UFO attack, because how many times can you see a UFO attack, and how many times can you make it unique? We already kind of almost saw UFO falling into that trap with using psychic control of humans three times already. And, we've watched 9 episodes. We've watched, a little more than a third of the show at this point. Or I guess we've watched 8 episodes, so pretty close to a third of the show. Just under. And they used that 3 times. So in a way, I'm glad they actually don't hone in so much on the UFOs and try to examine the effects of the UFOs more than the attack.
Yeah, plus it's episodes like these that make you care about the less character-focused and driven episodes, right? There's obviously going to be episodes in the future that are more focused on the UFO attacks and what the aliens are after, and sort of the more the less character-driven aspects of the show, and the more, I don't want to say sci-fi focused, because again, it's not like UFO is like hard sci-fi, but I'll just say it, whatever. The more sci-fi focused, or the more lore focused, or the ones that kind of paint a broader picture, it's hard to care about some of that stuff when you don't have the establishment for these characters and reason to care about them. So then these episodes kind of do that work along the way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like they... how do I want to say this? It's almost like they've put the character development into character-specific episodes and then the action into action-specific episodes, which I appreciate more than them trying to do both in every episode,
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think I get that. Well, anyway, speaking of characters and people and the human aspect, this episode had some humans in it. They were actors.
Yeah, you want to start us off? Because I think you looked up 2 people and I looked up 1.
Sure. I looked up Paul Maxwell, who played Jim. He has a far more extensive acting career than I expected. I've actually watched a few of his things before, too. So he's in over 100 things here, according to IMDb. Got his start in 1957 with General Electric Theater, and has also played in such a series as M Squad, Tales of Wells Fargo. That just makes me think of the, what is it, the bank, or is it like a mutual fund or something? I don't know. Whatever Wells Fargo is.
Wells Fargo is a bank.
Yeah.
I bank with Wells Fargo.
Oh, really? He was in Men of Annapolis, Playhouse 90, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Sea Hunt. He was in Danger Man. Probably means he was in The Prisoner as well. So let me just check if my stupid headphones would stop falling out. Was he in The Prisoner? Well, he was in The Saint. He was in Thunderbirds. He was in Coronation Street. Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons. So he has a pretty strong Jerry Anderson history here. Doesn't look like he was in The Prisoner unless I just missed it. He's in Control F. No, he wasn't in The Prisoner, surprisingly. Surprisingly, because a lot of people in Danger Man were also in The Prisoner. But anyway, he was in other stuff he was in. Man at the Top, The Lotus Eaters, Ski Boy, like you mentioned before we started recording, he was in The Pink Panther Strikes Again. He was in Aliens, the sequel to Alien. It's Aliens with a Z, right? Because a Z looks like a 2. No, I'm just kidding. It's not Aliens with a Z. His final role was in the TV miniseries Sleepers in 1991. The same year he died, I believe.
Well, I looked up Anthony Chin, who plays Lieutenant Tony Chin. Shocking. He's been in a couple things here. The Monkey King was his last role. He actually died in 2000 at the age of 70. He was born in 1930. He was in The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones. He was in A View to a Kill and also Dr. No, so 2 Bond movies, actually, as different characters, obviously. He was in Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. He was in Z-Cars. He was actually in UFO in a second episode where he plays an alien, which is interesting. He was also in Journey to the Far Side of the Sun / whatever that movie was also called.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, whatever it was called.
Doppelganger.
Yeah, I was about to say, Destruction.
He's one of 11 actors who was in both Doppelganger and UFO.
Whoa, one of 11. What a distinction.
I know, what a big distinction. Anyway, The Avengers, he was in Secret Agent, but not The Prisoner, at least not from what I can tell here. Yeah, I mean, he's got nothing here in 69 that says The Prisoner, so... The Saint, he was also in Goldfinger, actually, so he was in 3 Bond movies, just as background characters, mostly. He was also in Danger Man. I guess because if you'll remember Danger Man and Secret Agent and had that whole thing about being cancelled and coming back a couple years later and just the whole thing was... Anyway, he was in both Danger Man and Secret Agent. And that's pretty much everything that I noticed.
When we watched The Prisoner, we went through an entire saga of being able to deduce that, of how they list, the stupid way that they list Danger Man and Secret Agent, but whatever. Apparently, according to Dylan, we never looked up Dolores Montez. I believe him, but at the same time, I was like, wow, we didn't look her up, huh? But I guess we fixed that now.
I'm pretty sure we didn't look her up.
Well, now we have. So she was in Sapphire, as she played the distinguished and uncredited role of student in the International Club. She was in those ITV Play of the Week, Television Playhouse, what yada yada yada, whatever. She was in the Avengers. Don't know why I'm being so dismissive of her career, but she was in the Avengers. She was in Hurricane. She was also in Secret Agent. And also in Z-Cars, Rainbow City, Armchair Theater and ITV Playhouse. What else here? Yeah, she only has 20 credits. She was in My Partner the Ghost, Ryan International, a couple other things. But, yeah.
Nice. Well, we have an email this week to go over, to read, to review, to rate. From Steven, entitled Subsmash. Let me move the damn Skype thing out of the way so I can actually see the whole email. This was episode 8 in the order I watched, so surprisingly it's aligned with the slot on your viewing order. This one began with a bang. That opening scene alone was a better adaptation of Battleship than the film that came out 10 years ago. I really appreciated the toll of the events in A Question of Priority spilled into this episode toward the end, but again, I wish more had been done with that stuff. I'm going to pause here to say something that I forgot to say earlier, and I know I'm going to forget if I wait to the end of the email. But this is actually episode 17 in the production order, so it's actually the last episode filmed with Alec Freeman. Just thought that was interesting to note, which I guess maybe that's why, well, I don't know. I don't think that's why. I don't think they knew they were going on a production break, but it's interesting that in this final episode he was filmed in, Freeman gets a bit more of a sort of leading role.
Yeah, that couldn't have been intentional. There's no way. Because they didn't even know that at that point, they wouldn't have known that he wasn't coming back, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, okay, going on with the email. On your Kill Straker episode, it was great to hear that cooking with Trust Your Doctor is inevitable at this point. When you said something about Trust and Straker, it made me think that perhaps this UFO coverage season should be called Trust Your Straker. And answer to your question at the end, the answer is yes, you should kill Straker. Also, here are possible episode titles you might have considered. For that one, if you did custom episode titles, thank you very much. Can you sucker punch someone in the face? Even I have better things to do with my time. A couple pieces of sushi, going to sleep is like a big ritual. I probably could have only done it worse. The bumbling doesn't know what's going on, Straker. Straker should be firing himself. I'm still making my way through Zenith. In one of the episodes, Keon suggested doing a King of the Hill podcast, which sounds like such a fun idea, along with the Goosebumps podcast idea he mentioned elsewhere. Here's some possible names in my work for you guys. Propane accessories, pocket sand, just a Hank throw, hill count, Keon of the Dill, Speaking of the Hill. Keon also suggested Thundercats and said, quote, I like Thundercats more when I'm not watching it, close quote. I assume he means the original from 1985, given that the 2011 version is excellent. I tried going through the 1985 version and would watch on and off again over the course of almost a year and a half, when I recently realized I was only like 23 or 24 episodes in. After thinking I was much further into this 130 episode show, I decided to give up. Cheese, Steven. Then there's a PS email. PS, I forgot to mention that I finished watching Star Cops. Overall, I found the show to be just okay. I'm curious to know whether Keon did end up listening to that theme song again after all. Guess this just leaves Childhood's End as the only inevitable series I haven't watched. I'll probably read the book first, though it might be a little while as I have other stuff on my reading list, but with UFO being the only inevitable show I've really enjoyed watching, whereas the others for me range from meh to average, I think I can objectively say your UFO coverage is a golden age for inevitable.
Damn, well, this wasn't, I guess I probably knew this in the past, but it wasn't like fully cognizant of it, but I didn't realize that you weren't too keen on The Prisoner, Stephen. Devastating.
It's okay. Stephen also thinks there should be more superhero movies.
True. Yeah, I have watched both iterations of Thundercats. I've watched the entire 2011 one because it's only like 20-something episodes, I think. And then I've watched a good portion of the original one as well. I'm not, a big fan of either of them. While watching them, when it's a show that's better when you're not watching it, which I guess means it's not that good. The original also has some weird stuff in it that, I don't know, is just strange. Like the main character in the original is he's a child in the body of an adult, whereas in the new one he's not that. He's just normal. I mean, as far as basically well, I guess he's not a furry, but I guess an anthropomorphic lion.
I don't know why that was so funny.
You know what that show is, right? It's all the characters are anthropomorphic cats.
I mean, I only know what it is from your descriptions of it, so...
The opening animation for the original show is amazing. It was done by Toei, who also did the Transformers of that era.
Right, yeah.
And Dragon Ball. And a million other things. But the intro opening animation is great.
Nice.
I'll link it in the show notes. Yeah.
All right. Slap that bad boy in the show notes. I think that's everything for this episode, actually. I think that's it for me.
Yeah, I talked about what I wanted to touch on in the episode, thankfully.
All right, then. Well, if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decadentvegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on being trapped in a submarine for 8 hours. You can find us on YouTube at Decadent Vegetable. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you liked the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're going to be watching Destruction. The aliens attack a Royal Navy destroyer that is dumping sealed containers of highly toxic nerve gas in the sea. So another ocean-based episode, interestingly enough.
Interesting.
But until then, the end.